In this lecture, I want to discuss just a few of the key ideas that come from the thinker Friedrich Nietzsche. He is always included in discussions of existentialism. Your textbook author refers to him as one of the big four, along with Kierkegaard, Sartre, and Heidegger. There's a lot that could be said about Nietzsche. He's a very important thinker in his own right and as an inspiration for existentialism, although there are many features of his thought that conflict with what we'll hear from our more contemporary existentialists. So I just want to pick out a few of these themes and talk about them for just a little bit. He wrote a lot of books. Birth of Tragedy, On Truth and Lies in a Non-Moral Sense. Just think about that title for a second. Isn't truth-telling and lying what a core concept in morality? Well, he wants to talk about it in a non-moral sense. He, like Heidegger, was very interested in the Greeks. He wrote a series of books in the late 1870s through the late 1880s that were profoundly important. Human all too human, the gay science, the Fröhliche Wissenschaft, the gay science sometimes translated as the joyful wisdom or the joyful science. An amazing book-length poem, you almost want to call it, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Beyond Good and Evil, and The Genealogy of Morals, Twilight of the Idols, The Antichrist, Ecce Homo, a book that takes as its title the way Pilate introduced Christ to the crowd before his crucifixion, and a book that he did not write, but that was put together and collected by his sister called The Will to Power. I'm just going to talk about a couple of these key ideas. In fact, not even all these. Core ideas in Nietzsche's work are the death of God, the will to power, the genealogy of morals, transvaluation of values, the eternal return. If we had more time, I would talk about more, but I'm just going to talk about these two, the death of God and what he calls the eternal return, or sometimes called the eternal recurrence. So let's take this very famous passage on the death of God. Have you not heard of that madman who lit a lantern in the bright morning hours, ran to the marketplace, and cried incessantly, "I am looking for God! I am looking for God!" As many of those who did not believe in God were standing together there, he caused considerable laughter. "Have you lost him then?" said one. "Did he lose his way like a child?" said another. "Or is he hiding? Is he scared of us? Did he emigrate?" They shouted and laughed in this manner. The madman sprang into their midst and pierced them with his look. "Where has God gone?" he cried. "I will tell you. We have killed him, you and I. We are all his murderers." "But how have we done this? How are we able to drink up the sea? Who gave us the sponge to wipe away the entire horizon? What did we do when we unchained this earth from its sun? Where is it moving now? Where are we moving now? Away from all suns? Aren't we perpetually falling backward, sideward, forward, in all directions? Is there any up or down left anymore? Aren't we straying as through an infinite nothing? Do we not feel the breath of empty space? Hasn't it become colder? Isn't it more and more night coming on all the time? Must not lanterns be lit in the morning? Do we not hear anything yet of the noise of the grave diggers who are burying God? Do we not smell anything yet of God's putrefaction? God's decomposed too. God is dead, God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we, the murderers of all murderers, comfort ourselves? That which was holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet possessed has bled to death under our knives. Who will wipe this blood off us? With what water could we purify ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games will we need to invent? Isn't the greatness of this deed too great for us? Must we not ourselves become gods simply to seem worthy of it? There has never been a greater deed, and whoever shall be born after us, for the sake of this deed, he shall be part of a higher history than all the history that came before. Here the madman fell silent and again regarded his listeners, and they too were silent and stared at him in astonishment. At last he threw his lantern to the ground, and it shattered and went out. "I come too early," he said then. "My time hasn't come yet. This tremendous event is still on its way, still traveling. It has not yet reached human ears. Lightning and thunder need time. Deeds need time after they have been done before they can be seen and heard. This deed is still more distant from them than the most distant stars, and yet we have done it ourselves." It has also been related that on that same day the madman entered various churches and there sang a Requiem Aeternam Deo. Let out and told to shut up, he is said to have retorted each time, "What are these churches now, if they are not the tombs and sepulchres of God?" That's a very famous passage from that book that's translated The Gay Science or the Joyful Wisdom. Let's talk about it a little bit. So let's just sort of walk down through it. You'd have to be kind of mad, wouldn't you? Kind of crazy to be out in the broad daylight, the bright sunshine, with a lantern. What's that? What does that lantern signify that he lights up? Everybody look at, why do you need that flashlight on for? It's sunny out. We don't need that. I think you might consider this a metaphor for the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment is a period in European thought where the rise of modern science pushed the idea of religion to the peripheries of culture. In fact, the term enlightenment is kind of a polemical term. It's kind of fighting words. If we're the enlightened ones, then who are the people who oppose us? Oh, those are the people in the dark, still in the dark, chasing shadows. And the Enlightenment thought that, well, with empiricism and science, we could see clearly now. We don't have to listen to those myths anymore from religion and pay attention to all those priests who think they have some secret access. We could figure out the truth for ourselves. So Nietzsche's madman, I think, in some ways is here grappling with the Enlightenment. And look who he's talking to in the marketplace, in the maybe also a modern capitalistic kind of Europe that he's thinking about. Who does he encounter here? Who's he talking to? Those who don't believe in God anymore. Those who think that it's naive or childish to still be looking for God after the bright lights of the Enlightenment have lit up reality. We don't have to look for God anymore, and they're okay with that. They're comfortable with that. They find it amusing that this madman is still looking for God. And the madman stops and says, "Look, let me tell you something. I'll tell you where God is gone. We killed him. We killed him." Now you could think about this to get the emotional valence of this claim. Think about it. What sounds worse, so to speak? God does not exist, or we have killed God. God is dead. All right, it's a stronger kind of language. If you say God is dead, God was alive and now is not alive anymore. And how come God is not alive anymore? Because we've killed him. How did we kill him? Well, that's a good question. But Nietzsche feels that death of God is profound, that culture no longer is tethered or tied to the sun, is no longer in the orbit of God, which kept the idea, the concept of God, the power of God, kept order and meaning in our world. Well, we've cut off from that. We now live no longer in the finite cosmos where God is above and we, his creatures, are below the angels maybe, and above the beasts. We knew our place. There was a natural law. We had a blueprint for how we were supposed to live that could be found in religion through God's revelation. Now we've cut ourselves off from that. So in a way, we're free and we're equal, but we're equally lost. Is there any up? Is there any down anymore? What happens to directions when we've gotten rid of our standard, our signpost for where we are. What happens to that? If you think about the room that you find yourself in right now, and you were, let's say you're, I don't know, sitting at your desk, and I say, listen, I got this new drone that I want to fly right to your desk, but you got to give me the directions to get to your desktop. I can't see you, so could you describe where your desktop is in the room? And you say, sure, I could describe that. It's so many feet and inches from the ceiling, and so many feet and inches from the floor, and it's so many feet and inches from the front wall and the back wall and the one side wall and the other side wall. And basically what you're going to do is give me coordinates in that room. You're going to tell me the precise location in the room where your desktop is so I can land my drone there. But if you were to imagine yourself, which you can't do, in an infinite room, no floor, no ceiling, no sides, an infinite room, and I say, where is your desktop in this infinite room? You can't answer the question. You don't know whether it's aimed up or aimed down because there is no up or down anymore. You could tell me where it is relative to other things in the room, but if I ask you where are those things, you don't have any better of an answer. In cutting ourselves off from God, says Nietzsche, find ourselves with a real problem. We don't really know where we are. And he thinks that this enlightenment, scientific way, empirical way of looking at the world, the effects of that have not been felt. Right? The people who are laughing at the madman don't recognize how profound this change in culture really is. We don't hear the gravediggers yet. We don't smell, the God, the concept of God, rotting or decomposing. Right? We don't get it yet. We feel like, this is pretty good. I don't have to believe all that old mythology anymore. He says it hasn't really sunk in what that really means for us and how we're going to figure out who we are and what we're going to make out of ourselves. So he's talking in the last paragraph on this slide about, we're the murderers of all murderers. What does he mean by that? Well, God, if there's a God is running the show and everything dies. So you could say God is the murderer of all murderers, and we've murdered him. We've taken that out. So how are we going to comfort ourselves with that? Are we going to have to come up with new rituals, new rites, new ways to process where we are in the world? Because now we can't say, we're following our natural law, we're following our nature as creatures of God. Have we not become gods ourselves? In fact, with our modern science and its technology that derives from it, don't we sometimes even ask ourselves, what are we doing with this technology? Are we playing God? Well, that's exactly what Nietzsche was talking about in the 19th century. And here we all are now with genetic engineering and cloning and what we're doing to the earth and so on and so forth. How are we going to live with ourselves? How are we going to figure out who we are? He realizes that he's come too early. My time has not yet come. Again, that's another line from Jesus. Nietzsche had like to try to find parallels between his own life and Jesus in very unusual ways for a man who wrote a book called The Antichrist. He says it's going to take time for this to really sink in, that the modern world that we often think brings us so many marvels of technology and medicine and travel and the internet and so forth, it hasn't really sunk in the cost of modernity. We haven't really figured that out. And he's saying that in the 19th century, and I think it may still be taking time to come through even in the 21st century. Maybe we're just starting to do that. And look at that last line there. What are these churches now if they are not the tombs and sepulchres of God? Have you visited Europe? I mean, America is a different place, but have you visited Europe where Nietzsche, who is came from a long line of ministers, Lutheran pastors, in his background, he came from a European context. If you visited Europe, what are the churches? They're museums. You go there for sightseeing. You go there to look at the architecture and the paintings and the sculpture and so forth. That's where God used to be It's now just a tomb. And it sometimes seems like that. And when he was writing this, not now, but when he was writing this, the churches were filled every day. Right? Everybody still did church. Kind of like in a lot of places in the States. In Europe at that time, everybody still did. And he was saying this then. And guess what? Time passed, and maybe it turns out he was right. So, what's the theme of this death of God? Nietzsche is saying something that goes further or broader than the idea that religion doesn't have the same cultural cachet as it traditionally had in the European context, and that would include us too in America's European background anyway. He's talking about something broader than that. He's saying not only is there no God, but there's really no God substitute either. There's nothing that we know of that can fill the place of God, the God of religion. There's nothing that can fill the place that was emptied out by the modern Enlightenment, by modern philosophy and modern scientific technology. We don't have anything that can fill its place. And when we talk a little bit later on, very briefly, about the philosopher Immanuel Kant, he himself, recognized that, empirically you can't, point a telescope up in the sky and see God sitting up there. But Kant's going to say, well, don't worry. We need God. We need something to fill that void, and we have it. We can find it in our own rationality, our own rational nature. Nietzsche says no to that too. That is just another what he calls lie. Not a lie in a moral sense. Nobody's trying to deceive anybody, but it's something we need to tell ourselves in order to get through the day, so to speak, in order to make sense out of things. And Nietzsche, is his philosophy, a lot of it is about strength. You saw the title of that book, Will to Power. He thinks we need strength to handle the truth, and we don't always have the strength to handle the truth. So we tell ourselves philosophical and theological stories to, comfort ourselves. And existentialism, which does take some, inspiration from Nietzsche, not all, likes to think of it as truth-telling, likes to think of it as getting to the truth of us, past theories, past theologies, past mythologies, and trying to get to the truth of ourselves. And Nietzsche says, in this story is, well, maybe we're not ready. Well, a lot to think about in that little parable there. I'll leave you to think some more about. Let me give you another passage. Also comes from this book, The Gay Science, a piece that's entitled "In the Horizon of the Infinite." It's related. We have left the land and have gone aboard ship. We have broken down the bridge behind us. Nay, more, the land behind us. Well, little ship, look out. Beside thee is the ocean. It is true it does not always roar, and sometimes it spreads out like silk and gold and a gentle reverie. But times will come when thou wilt feel that it is infinite, and there is nothing more frightful than infinity. Oh, the poor bird that felt itself free and now strikes against the walls of this cage. Alas, if homesickness for the land should attack thee, as if there had been more freedom there, and there is no land any longer. Well, this is another way of kind of asking ourselves the same kind of question. The land signifies that traditional society and culture and views of ourselves that gave us comfort, but they also constrain us. These myths and these religious stories, like I can't do what I want, I'm not free, I can't think for myself. Immanuel Kant said the motto of the Enlightenment is sapere aude, dare to think for yourself. And the traditional society with God at the top made me feel constrained. Well, I'm breaking out. I'm getting in my ship of the Enlightenment. I'm setting sail, and I'm getting rid of the gangplank behind me. In fact, I'm getting rid of the whole land behind me. And off I go into an infinite sea. I don't know if you've ever had the chance to be at sea, like way out at sea, especially on a foggy day, but it's uncanny. a foggy day when you can't see the horizon line, where there's nothing to be seen in any direction other than either the horizon line or nothing, you don't know where you are. You don't know whether you're up or down. This is a very uncanny kind of feeling, and Nietzsche's trying to convey that here. He says, look, we felt like we got free because we got rid of religion, but what about now? What about if I don't feel free? What if I feel lost? What if I feel I don't know who I am or what meaning is or what's up and down in life? What if I don't know about that? And I want to turn around and go back to land. And Nietzsche is saying that the modern mind can't easily turn back anymore to the ancient world, to the medieval world, to the world of religion and mythology. We can't do it anymore. We can't take it seriously anymore. We've killed that mythology because we thought we'd be free. And now, who are we? What are we all about? This is an idea, again, that's taken up by our modern existentialists in this idea of finding meaning and not being able to find meaning, and how do we make meaning when meaning is not provided for us or revealed to us in some way. So here's another place where Nietzsche is an important influence. And now just one last piece, also from this remarkable book, The Gay Science. This is where Nietzsche talks about what now we call either the eternal recurrence or the eternal return, or the eternal return of the same, it's sometimes called. This is a thought experiment. So you can play along. It's a what if. It's entitled The Greatest Weight. What if some day or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live it and have lived it, you will have to live once more and innumerable times more, and there will be nothing new in it. But every pain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you, all in the same succession and sequence, even this spider and this moonlight between the trees and even this moment and I myself. The eternal hourglass of existence is turned upside down again and again, and you with it, speck of dust. All right, let me interrupt for a second. You get the picture? A spirit comes to you and says, I'm going to reveal something to you. You didn't know it before, but now I'm telling you. Your life, as you've lived it from the moment you were born, you are going to have to live again and again and again and again and again, forever, to infinity. And everything that has happened to you up until this point will happen to you exactly the same way again and again and again in the exact same order, right up until this moment right here when I, the Spirit, am telling you this. Okay, get the picture? So now he asks the question. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? In other words, would that be upsetting news? Would that be bad news, what you just heard? Or have you once experienced a tremendous moment when you would have answered him, you are a god, and never have I heard anything more divine? If this thought gained possession of you, it would change you as you are, or perhaps crush you. The question in each and everything, do you desire this once more and innumerable times more, would lie upon your actions as the greatest weight. How well disposed would you have to become to yourself and to life to crave nothing more fervently than this ultimate eternal confirmation and seal? So the demon is saying, you could look at this two ways. You could look at this as bad news. Oh man, again and again and again. Are you kidding me? The last March with the COVID and the shutdown, I got to do that again? Forever? That's bad news. But what would it take for the demon's revelation to you to be good news? What would it take? And some people have some philosophers and commentators on Nietzsche have taken this to be a metaphysical claim, like Nietzsche is saying, this is how it really is. The world just goes around again and again and again and again in the exact same order. I don't think, myself, my own view, I don't think that's what Nietzsche is saying here. I think it is a thought experiment that asks you to think about your life. Think about how you live your life. This little piece is called the greatest weight. All right, so what is that great weight? What is that great weight that weighs on you if this demon is right? It's the weight of every moment and every choice going forward, because now you know. Now you know that everything you do, you will do to infinity over and over again. So it would make a difference to you what you do if you knew you had to do it over and over again. And if you like what you do, if you choose what you do, if you own what you do, if you find the meaning, make the meaning in what you do, this might be good news because you're doing what you want to do. You're being you. You're being what we'll call authentic later on. That'll be good news. But if you're not, if you're just going along, if you're just going with the crowd, if you're just doing it because who knows why, and now you learn today that I got to keep doing that over and over again, this is going to sound bad and it's going to sound crushing. So Nietzsche's putting a question to you about how you are living your life and how you're understanding the truth of your life and how strong you are in owning the responsibility for your life. Well, these are just a few of the basic ideas coming from Nietzsche. He's a tremendous writer. He's probably the most talented writer as a writer in the history of philosophy. Extremely controversial. His views can be quite overwhelming for some people. But he knew that. There's a story. Nietzsche is all about strength. He thinks, for instance, that Christianity is nihilistic. And you would think, how could Christianity be nihilistic? Christianity believes in God. There's a God who gives you commandments. There's meaning and value because there's God. Nietzsche says, no. Christian values tell you to be meek, be mild, be humble, turn the other cheek. Nietzsche says, that's not life. Life is about overcoming and power and taking charge and winning. So any doctrine that tells you, turn the other cheek is nihilistic. It leads to your annihilation. That's pretty strong claim. And he had harsh things to say about Christianity. When we talked about Kierkegaard, we learned that he had harsh things to say about Christendom, about the way people lived out their cultural Christianity in an easy peasy kind of way. But Kierkegaard thought Christianity could challenge you to live authentically. Nietzsche, he says, I'm just against Christianity as such, and not just its cultural manifestations, but just the whole idea of it is life-denying. So for me, I find it nihilistic. If you want values, the value is power, the value is life, those kind of things. And he knew those kind of views would be very challenging. And there's a story that he was at some sort of gathering, and this nice old society lady comes up to him and is introduced to this Professor Nietzsche, and she says, "Oh, I've heard your reputation. I've never read any of your books, so I can't wait to read them." And Nietzsche, the story goes, begged her not to read his books. "Oh, madam, these books, they're not for you. It's too much for you. Please, I'm begging you, don't. It'll only upset you. Don't read these books." So, Nietzsche did understand that he was very much pushing buttons to the learned ones. Well, anyway, that's just a tiny little bit of Nietzsche. I hope it wets your whistle. Maybe for another day we could spend more time on Nietzsche, but not today.